Good afternoon. Well, I'm not really in a position of power or authority that I could offer a course, kind of like a seminar into the great variety of works of Fernandez de Lizardi, nor teach one, but there probably are some of you out there that have the credentials. If you haven't thought about it, let me just convince you what I think would be a good course and what it would consist of. So, as I was saying at the very beginning, Fernandez de Lizardi did have a great variety in the things that he wrote, not just El Periquillo Sarniento. He wrote in nearly every genre of literature, besides the novels that he wrote, which I think if I were teaching the course, that would be the first thing I would start with. He also wrote plays, he wrote poetry, and he wrote fables, which I guess the fables were probably like short stories. I'll admit the fables is not something I've read, but I've read about them, and it sounds very interesting. They're kind of along the same lines as Aesop's fables. And then he also wrote some essays. The essays are what we talked about before. They were kind of a compilation of his pamphlets that were sold in the street, but they weren't stories, they were just straight essays. And there are several big volumes of his quote unquote essays which have been bound, and I read those. They're very interesting reading. And I think another reason why I thought about offering kind of a seminar, a course, and all his different writings. When I was in college, I did take a course on one of Cervantes' writings. The whole course was just about Don Quixote. But then that professor also taught another course, which unfortunately didn't come around before I left that university. It was called The Other Works of Cervantes. So I got to thinking, in the case of Fernandez de Lizardi, El Periquillo Sarniento, the unabridged version, is just about as long as the Don Quixote two-volume novel. But I don't really know that I would recommend or advise doing a course just on that, just on the unabridged version, because as we've mentioned before, the longer version has a lot of digressions, and the shorter version has some of the same digressions, but it goes into less detail. And not every single digression from the main story in the longer version is interesting. So I think it would be in the best interest of anybody studying all his different genres to do the shorter version. And then you could kind of combine the Cervantes courses that my professor taught, Don Quixote, the other works of Cervantes. You could just have one semester course with everything. So I think you should start off with about 3 weeks with El Periquillo Sarniento. Then after that, and I wouldn't do the novels that he wrote necessarily in chronological order. I would arrange them in a way that would work well for the flow of the course. But the second one that I think I would do would be Don Catrin de la Facenda. And that's kind of a story about kind of a pretty boy, a dandy, for whom appearances were so much more important than anything else in life, to the point where he was willing to go into deep debt and kind of destroy his life just because keeping up appearances was all that mattered to him. That's a much shorter novel. Some of his novels were barely long enough to be considered a novel. That one you could probably do in just a week. And then after that, I think an even shorter novel, which you could probably do in just one class, but you might want to take a class and a half. Noches tristes y dia alegre, which means sad nights and joyful morning, or joyful day. And that story is completely different from El Periquillo Sarniento and Don Catrin de la Facenda, and very interesting because it's different. Then the last novel that I would cover would be La Quijotita y su prima. And you can kind of hear the word Quixote in there. Quijotita is kind of like the little Quixote woman. And that is probably, that's a very long one. That one may be as long as 500 pages. I don't remember, it's been a while since I've read that one. But I kind of agree with the critics that that's his most inferior work because it's very didactic and just not very interesting. But I mean, if I were teaching the course, it wouldn't really just be a matter of what I care about. I mean, you're looking at his novels, you may as well do all of them. But I don't think for that one I would have the students suffer through any more than just 2 weeks of that story, and then I think I would fill in the gaps and summarize the rest for them. Then after the novels, after the novels, I think it would be fun, especially after La Quixote Suprema, to do a few days of the fabulas, the fables. That would probably be a nice change, a nice transition. Then after that, he did a number of plays, and I think I would pick 3 plays. And to make it interesting, I think I would pick a student for each one of those 3 plays to give a little summary or a synopsis of each play. And let's see, after that, I think I would do some of his poetry, focus partly on the themes of the poetry, but also help the students just kind of identify the different techniques of poetry, especially since if I were teaching the course, I wouldn't be planning to spend any more than just a week on the poetry. Then finally, after that, that would just leave us to the essays, which, if it were my course, I think I would spend even more time on the essays than Periquillo Sarniento itself. So I do think that would be kind of a fascinating course and probably a lot of fun, even though it is kind of early 19th century. You know, who says that the 20th century and the 21st century has to be the end all and the cat's meow for everything in literature? But those are just my thoughts, and as I say, I'll never be able to put something like this together and teach it, but if I could, I think I would really enjoy that. Anyway, I hope you found this interesting. Bye.